Hello and welcome to the first annual Follow Money, Fight Slavery Summit. I'm Sam Graber, Chief Communications Officer for the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative, also known as ATII. ATII helps financial institutions promote their corporate social responsibility through increasing awareness, facilitating intelligence integration and technology advancement, all while establishing strategic data collaboration focused on one outcome: to combat human trafficking. Throughout the virtual summit, you will hear industry thought leaders discuss the importance of how now more than ever, it is time for financial institutions to take action against human trafficking. Human trafficking is a financial crime, and this is an industry call to action. As you listen today and find yourself wanting to dive deeper, please visit us at followmoneyfightslavery.org. When you're there, you'll find free resources that can be put into play immediately. While you're there, also take a quiz, and it's called Amp Up Your Corporate Social Responsibility Impact. This is focused on combating human trafficking for our fellow human beings. With me today is Kat Wehunt, founder and executive director of the Formation Project. It is a nonprofit serving survivors of human trafficking in a very unique and much needed way, which we will discuss today. Now, Kat isn't speaking with me as a passionate observer such as myself. She is speaking from a place of great knowing, for she herself was trafficked. I'll let her share her story, for only she should be giving voice to the power that lives deep within her. She inspires me, and I am confident she will inspire you too. Now, one thing I want to put out there before we start: some of what Kat shares may emotionally affect you. That is okay, and in my opinion, it is healthy to feel compassion for a fellow human being. On the flip side, what she shares may trigger something darker in you. If that happens, please know there is help for you to uncover why it is triggering. Now, if you have a mental health support network, please plug into them ASAP. All right, so hello, Kat. It's good to see you.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for
Hi. I always loved speaking with you. I feel like we could talk for hours, and it's such a joy to spend time with you. And we just go and go and go. And your leadership and your insights just really impress me. I'm so thrilled you're here today.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
good.
What we're doing.
Yeah, we have a lot of great things to discuss. Like we've kind of, we did our pre-call, everyone, just so you know. So we discussed some of the ideas that we felt would be best for you to walk away with. If you have any questions or concerns or want to add to the conversation, if you're joining us today on Summit, there's a chat box to the side. If you're catching this as a pre-recorded, then by all means, just send an email into us at info@followmoneyfightslavery. And then there will also be a link in the show notes below or to the side or above. I'm not sure, depending on the platform. Just look for a link there to the Formation Project, and you can learn a little bit more about what Kat is up to. And you can also get involved in helping their organization in whatever means and ways that you can. So today, what we're going to do is just start out with a brief overview of the Formation Project. Kat, if you would share with folks just sort of what you're up to up there, and then how the Formation Project came to be.
Sure.
Sure.
So in 2019, I was chairing our survivor subcommittee for our statewide human trafficking task force, and I was chairing a subcommittee of survivors that are advising on policies and programs and procedures and things happening on the state level. And I met Brooke Burst, who chairs our regional Tri-County Human Trafficking Task Force.
Okay.
So I started to help her, as the task force was new, coordinate and ensure that there was a crisis response for survivors of trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started ambitiously on this goal and quickly realized that there was no services for adult victims, and there was no place for them to go or number for them to call or service for them. And so after some months of thought and deliberation, and we decided that it was necessary for a nonprofit. There had to be somebody there to provide services, a person that was able to receive the call and help somebody get out and then walk with them on the healing journey. And so that's kind of how we started. And so quickly things began to fall into place, and we started to work with community members and other service providers on making sure that there was comprehensive services available for all types of survivors in the area. So that's what
Love it. What do you define as comprehensive services? If you wouldn't mind giving them just a little insight for folks watching.
Good question. So there's so many nuances, I think, to the
Yeah.
aftercare of survivors, and there's so many needs. And so it's definitely individual based on that person's needs and where they're at. We have people coming out, escaping an exploitive situation that night and coming to us with no
Mhm.
clothes, no medical care. And then we have people coming to us saying, I was trafficked 5 years ago and I'm
Mhm.
stable, but I need counseling or therapy. And so it's definitely individual, but it's wraparound. It's looking at the individual as a whole and saying, what do you need to be sustainable and live independently and successfully? And so it's
Yeah.
everything from mental health needs to medical needs to aftercare to mentorship to um, apartment help, criminal and legal help, all of
Mhm.
it. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is, and I love that you call it wraparound care. I think that's the perfect term. And then that also can fit into what we'll discuss a little later today about how financial institutions can feed into that in their own communities and really help fill a need that is massive, whether it be helping teach financial literacy or potentially serving as job training, job placement. There's so many different things that these institutions and wonderful, caring human beings within them can be doing. So I love that term, wraparound. I'm gonna put that right there. That's a good one. So this it's obviously something that you're very, very passionate about, and that's what it takes. I mean, and passion is one thing, but it's that thing that drives you. It's got to be that, people call it the why, but that's kind of a buzz term now in the field. But there's got to be something that helps you, get connected to this issue and makes you just, you get up in the middle of the night thinking about it. You get up in the morning, charging straight forward. Would you share a little bit about kind of how you got to this point? You mentioned you were at a human trafficking, task force. Take us back a little bit, like from here back, if you would share whatever you feel you want to share.
Sure.
Cool.
So I grew up in South Florida, and my parents
Okay.
were um, divorced at a really young age, so around one
Mhm.
or two. So it was never something that was
Okay.
a point of trauma or discontent for me. In fact, I kind of liked it because when mom was annoying me, I would go to dad's house. And so,
Sure.
um, but with that, Dora's parents, my dad was living in North Florida, and so I would have to
Okay.
do the weekends and the summer vacations and holidays visiting dad. And so there's lots of back and forth. And
Mhm.
in I grew up in my parents are the most opposite humans in the entire earth. I don't know how they ever got together, but um, my
Sure.
dad was very go with the flow and kind of reckless, but in a lot of fun, but
Mhm.
also kind of and my mom's very strict and very has it together. And so my
Sure.
mom ended up remarrying a cop, and she said, I need a job, and because I have a little girl, and so she became a cop as well. And so I think that's where some of that strict nature came from. And so um, I lived two parallel lives when I was going from dad's house to mom's house. And
Sure.
so at mom's house, I would get in trouble if I had a C. At dad's house, it was like, we're going to party and we're going to hang out together and invite your friends over because this is where, where we're going to party. And so they were both close family, though. I was close to both sides. And
Okay.
so I give all preface all of this to say that there was lots of back and forth. And so
Mhm.
um, I think something important to note is that I can never remember a time before sexual abuse. And so that was something that was present in my life as far back as I can remember. And
Mhm.
I think that's important because a lot of the women that I serve and the people that I meet, I think Polaris Project says 80 to 90% of women and children prior to recruitment experience sexual abuse. And so
Yeah.
it was something so normal to me that I didn't know that it wasn't happening in every home. And I actually thought that we all just didn't talk about it, but it was a normal thing. And so growing up, I have 11 brothers and sisters, a big family.
Wow. Yeah.
And we were all left to watch each other. And I had an older relative that was abusing most of us. And so I knew that it wasn't just me being abused. So it's even more made it a normal thing that was happening in my life. And so that continued for a long time. And there were a number of things that I feel like I was groomed. My vulnerabilities were definitely exploited. And my dad was sick for a time being, and I had a little sister. And those were two things that I remember being used frequently to keep me quiet about the abuse that I was experiencing. And so that continued as a normal thing. And I didn't tell anybody until I was 14 and I was visiting my dad's house. And this older relative said, "Hey, let's go. We're going to go out." And we were kind of allowed to do whatever we wanted. And so I was like, "Sweet, let's go out." I definitely was a mature kid. All of the older kids were too old to be around. They were getting into their own trouble. And I was the oldest that was taking care of all of the younger ones. So I was like the little mama of the family. And I think with that, I wanted to be around older people and I wanted to experience grown things and adult things. And so when my older relative was like, "Let's go out," I was excited because he was older. And this was the relative that was abusing me. And so we went to this house and I was thinking we were there for drugs, actually.
Okay.
And it was just a bad time. And so we get to this house and he looks at me in the car and he says, "Hey, I just want you to know that the people that were going into this house, I have like beef with them. And I just need you to help me smooth things over and we won't be here long and we'll leave." And I kind of wasn't listening to him as seriously as I feel like I probably should have. And I was like, okay. And we walk into this house and it's this empty, like trap house. Urban Dictionary it.
Yeah, there you go.
Trap house. And so it was this empty house. And I remember thinking, this is weird. There's no furniture. There's no decor. And there were 3 men in there and 2 women. And I remember also looking at the women at 14 going, they're dressed kind of provocatively. And I remember thinking they worked at the club because I had older sisters that worked at a strip club. And so looking back, my boundaries to commercial sex were slowly being expanded, right? And so I already had a kind of an experience with commercial sex and in the stripping realm, right? The club realm. So I remember thinking that. And my cousin looks at me and he asked me to go into a back room with these 3 men. And I didn't realize what was going to happen until I get into this back room and they start to undress. And I was like, oh, like all of a sudden, like it was like slow motion was like, this is what's going to happen. And this was the first time anyone outside of my family was going to abuse me. And so I started immediately to fight back. And I was fighting. And the more I fought, the more they fought me. And it was one of those experiences where people say this in movies, and it literally happened where felt like I was like looking at my body from above, like watching everything that was happening to me from like a third party. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to die. Like this is 14 and I'm dying. And then it was like in a moment, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't die? Okay. Now I have to live with everything that just happened to me for the rest of my life. And so it was like this torn feeling of, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? And after they were done, I was in really bad shape and had been beaten up pretty badly. And I went out to my relative and he cleaned me up and immediately like cradled me and rocked me back and forth and was like, "I'm so sorry. I'll never let that happen to you again." And I thought he was telling me the truth. And I didn't know that it was going to be another 5 years of this hell that I was going to live every summer vacation, every holiday. He worked for a country club and he was a ball boy doing like golf stuff. And he had all of these clients, and little did I know that I was going to be sold to teachers and doctors and lawyers and pastors and worship pastors and child advocacy lawyers. And people you would never think that would buy sex from a child. And so that drastically changed everything about the direction my life was heading. And I
Mhm.
started to kind of socially get in trouble a little bit here and there at school. However, I was achieving in a academically at a high level. I graduated high school with a 4.2 GPA and my associate's degree, and I was captain of the guard team, and I was in band, and I was in everything you could think of because I
Sure.
didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
And my mom and my stepdad, they also, I mean, they were good good parents, great parents, but they had their issues as well with
Mhm.
just alcohol, and it, there was no safety. There was no safe place for me, and so I tried to spend as much time at school as I could. And
Sure.
I still didn't tell anybody all the way until I was 17. And at 17, I had a friend who would drag me to church with her, and she brought me to this conference, and I started meeting and getting to know these people who are telling me this story of that you matter and you have worth and you have value, and that there's a plan and a purpose for your life. And I decided, if I didn't tell anybody, but I said, I'll never go back to see my dad. I'll never see that family. That's what it means. Again, I'm not going back. I'm not letting this happen to me anymore. And I
Mhm.
think I was super privileged to be able to just make a decision to get out of trafficking, because it's not the norm. Like, people don't just get to choose to not go back or not to to get
Sure.
out. And so I was blessed that I had that opportunity. And so I did, but I still didn't tell anybody. And
Sure.
so I got out at 17. I didn't see that side of the family for a little while, and
Mhm.
I immediately started to identify with sexual abuse survivor or domestic violence, or um, like recovery from addiction issues,
Sure.
or I was dealing with eating disorder and self harm and a slew of other things that come with the trauma that I
Yeah.
experienced. And so I started volunteering for sexual assault centers. I was like, I'll
Yeah.
sweep your floor, I'll wash your toilets. Like, I want to be in this space. I know I'm supposed to be in this space. Like, I will
Mhm.
do whatever it takes.
Okay.
And so I was actually started moving up, and I became a victim advocate, and I was sitting in a training, and somebody was telling me about human trafficking in this training,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting through this training going, oh my gosh, this is what happened to me. And it was I was 19, and I
Okay.
was like, well, can you guys let me know where the nearest human trafficking agency is, because I think I need to be going and volunteering.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's how I identified myself. I had no clue that I was a victim of trafficking, because I thought I wasn't chained to a bed or duct taped or put in a cargo ship and drove across state lines, so I
Yeah.
wasn't trafficked, right? Until I really realized what actually trafficking looks like, and how common it is. And so that's kind of how I got started in this field, learning and sweeping
Yeah.
floors and volunteering and things like that. But I knew once I sat through that training, excuse me,
Mhm.
that that's where I was supposed to be, and this is what I was supposed to be doing. So
Yeah. That's great, and I appreciate you sharing that. It wasn't something that was obvious to you, and that's why we talk a lot about helping spread awareness and to stop with the media messages of this and the hands tied
mhm,
and, locked in a basement, because those do not help, not only in when it comes to potentially prosecuting, because juries and judges are very misinformed as to what trafficking looks like, because
very
there's no straight across the board, there's no one size fits all. And most importantly, people who've been trafficked and abused and exploited don't they compare their story. They're like, well, this was this and this started here and it's all, it's all you knew. But then when you became informed, it would just everything came full circle and made sense. And because of the constitution of you and who you are, you want to go help. And now it's like, okay, I'm here. I need help. Where's the help? Well, there's no help. Okay. All right. So if there's no help, I got to create help, right? But we can't do and give when we are still living in the trauma. And that's something, right? That's something to keep in mind. And that's where you talked about this wraparound care. That's incredibly important. And everyone's at a different stage of healing from trauma, whether we've been trafficked or not, whether we've been exploited or not, abused or not. Life is traumatic. And, being in that trauma, that's where I feel like people can really connect, the child in you connects with the child in the next person. And
Yeah.
that's a good thing, and that's why, and that's a part, that's kind of where I play with people. And I think, okay, even if there's someone comes in a form right now where it's like, this person is really trying my nerves, but I try to think back and go, okay, why are they behaving this way? What's going on? And that's another thing, often with survivors is, we're talking to financial experts here in law enforcement. Sometimes survivors don't make the greatest witness, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the trauma, and I did feel like I skipped over the amount, I mean, the years of
I
trauma
can't even
work that it
imagine.
took me to sleep at night, to
Mhm.
be able to be around men, to stay soft and not be
Mhm.
hard and hardened to the world, to understand myself and take responsibility for my healing, not for what happened
Yes.
to me, but for my healing. And I think something interesting, and I tell the girls that I work with that get to serve, like, most people don't have to look at themselves this hardly, or this hard.
No.
It's hard. Most people don't
No.
have to do the trauma work that we have to do because we have gone through the things that we've been through. But knowing that this is going to set you up and push you so much farther than other people, because you're doing work that everyone should do. Everyone should do.
Amen. Right. Yep.
But it's so helpful to my work, understanding myself, and the trauma that I went through helps me understand other people so much better. And so you're so
Mhm.
right about that. That's a great
Mhm. Yeah, and I agree 100% with what you said. We all have work to do. Yeah, we all have work to do, and it's being compassionate not only with others but with ourselves. And so, if those of you watching right now are really kind of getting inspired, like, yeah, that I am able to see people more as who they are. Please understand that people who are in an exploitative situation, you might perceive that they are there by choice, and they are probably convincing themselves at times that they are there by choice because it's a survival mechanism. It's
Mhm.
the only way you survive some of these things, to say, yep, I agree. I'm not worth being protected. I mean, the gamut, we could go on for hours. But just keep in mind, folks, that it's people working through their things. And when they come into their survivor space, these are incredibly resilient people. I mean, some of the most intelligent, driven,
Yes.
just incredible people. I tell you, when I get to speak with folks. And so I hope you all are kind of identifying that in CAT and really understanding that, people as they go through their journey, they can just wrap it up and say, okay, that's something that happened to me, and put it on a shelf, and maybe, still do some work. And that is a beautiful and perfect choice. Then there are others like Kat. Kat is like, yeah, I got to do something. I'm moved. I'm called. So take us, from where you are now, like with the formation project. Where are you now? And then what do you see for the future? We've talked and brainstormed, and some of you folks may not know I'm an executive coach and a business coach. I've had multiple businesses. I love business, and I love what Kat is up to. So I'm already going, okay, how are we going to do this together? How can I help? Some advisory roles, but take us, where you are now and where you want to go.
Absolutely. So we are growing quickly, but in doors are opening in such wonderful ways. And so
Yeah.
we're hoping to open the first shelter in South Carolina for survivors. And so
Wow.
that hopefully will be coming this year, which we're so excited and um, gracious to be able to do. But it's going to be a game changer for our state and for North Carolina, because right now we're driving people um, like a long ways to get just safe, just shelter, just a bed, just
Yes.
a place to sleep. And so that's going to be huge. And so we're working on that. But I've learned in serving so many different people in so many different situations that we can't just throw services at people, um,
Yes.
and we can't just get them a job and get them a place to live and get them medical care, because they're still left with the same vulnerabilities that may have gotten them into the situation that they were in. Not that it was their fault, but the vulnerabilities were what was exploited is what I see most often. And so um, they need wraparound support. They need mentorship. They need real relationships. You have to realize that trafficking and kind of like cult-like behavior are kind of
Mhm.
similar in some ways. And so you're leaving a group and a community and people, and all those people may have been harmful to you or not the best people. They may have been the best option that that person has. And
Very
so
true.
when you're leaving an exploitive situation, you're also leaving all of the people and the family in your community that you know. And the people who leave exploitive situations are incredibly brave to do so, because
Oh
it is
gosh, yeah.
so hard. And
Mhm.
so we have to make sure that they have long-term support, which is making sure that they have somebody to call if they're struggling or
Mhm.
they're backsliding. And so
Sure.
that trauma work and that trauma piece is so important, because you could have a job and you could have a safe place to stay, but you're going to get yourself into situations or emergency situations or dangerous or unsafe situations if you're not able to make those decisions. And those the impulsiveness is hard. You have to heal that part of your brain. That's the part of your brain that actually gets stops growing when you're in trauma. It just stops. It freezes.
Yes.
And so um, there's a lot that comes with that. So we're hoping to open a drop-in center to make sure that we're offering life skills classes and peer support groups and things like financial literacy. That is is such a huge piece, because finances, and just speaking personally for myself, that's a
Sure.
big trigger for me. And I know lots of the people that I serve, finances are one of the biggest triggers, right? Because this is it was a money issue. We had a
Sure.
price to us. We had um, an amount that we were sold for. And so when I even get into financial situations or pinches, I go back into that fight, fright, or freeze. And so teaching
Okay.
people how to make good decisions for the future, or not to act
Mhm.
impulsively, or not to go post up when you're in a trafficking situation, or how to manage your money, right? Like my pimp didn't teach me how to run a board meeting or how to
No.
balance my checkbook. So those are
Right.
things that we have to
Right.
teach people. And so it's exciting. And then there's so many barriers that come, not just psychologically, but just like credit. I
Yeah.
mean, it is impossible to get people into an apartment if they don't have
Absolutely.
credit or prior renting, history or something like
Mhm.
that. Or we have pimps that will take like credit out in
Yeah.
survivors' names, and so it creates huge barriers. Or they have felonies on their record, and so we're really, it the system is set up unfortunately with a lot of barriers, and so we're just problem solving constantly. And so that's what we're doing. It's funny, one of the things that like is just a normal thing is, if you have a felony, you have to work at a
Mhm.
felony friendly place. But if you have a felony, you can't associate with known felons.
Okay. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things are, yeah, so we're
Insanity. Mhm.
it takes a team. That can be overwhelming if you're trying to navigate this by yourself. And so
Absolutely.
we're just coming around them and saying, you can do this. And there's people who've done this before,
Mhm.
and you can do this. And
Yeah.
so just empowering people to take back their own lives and figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives. It's exciting, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful to walk with somebody and watch them get to know themselves and call me like, yeah, I love art and I think I want to be an artist, or I love
Love
cutting hair and I think I want to be a cosmetologist, and or whatever it is. It's
it.
exciting.
Mhm.
It's inspiring as well. So
It is. I love it. I love it. And you hit on so many very important things that I would love to dive into a few of those. People often see there's a lot of sensationalizing around human trafficking. We know it's become like a buzzword in a way, and people think, oh, 112 traffickers or bad guys were arrested, and that's so great. Or, we went in and rescued, I love this term. We went in and rescued 14 trafficking victims, and they usually, or they'll just say victims. And it's amazing to me the mentality that most have is like, well, I mean, you got rescued. Well, why aren't
mhm.
you why aren't you functional now? Like you got out of that situation, and you hit on so many of those points where it's the brain has been traumatized depending what age the trauma started. And if it's something that started in childhood and someone never had anyone really teaching them or mentoring them or loving them, it's very hard for someone to come out of that world and then just be fixed. Here I am, ready to take on the world. That doesn't naturally happen. That's something that requires a community, and that's what that's why we're sharing so deeply with people, so they can understand that there's a lot behind that quote unquote rescue. And it requires every municipality, every city, every county, every state has different rules and laws. And yeah, I mean, many of these young men and women, because please understand, everybody, men can be trafficked as well, boys. That's a whole world that we don't talk about even more because of the other issues that we all have as a society talking about that. But those are conversations that will be coming, folks. Trust me. We need to be having these conversations, because if we don't, it becomes like what Kat experienced, where we just don't talk about it. We just don't talk about it. And that makes kids think this is normal. This is what I'm meant for. And that's not okay. That's not okay. We have to stop that. We have to start exposing the people that are doing the things and stop protecting them. And, there might be some of you watching right now that are doing things that are less than amenable. That's not okay. There's nothing natural about that. There's nothing all right about that. So get yourself some help. If you're out there and you're not doing the right things in this world, please get yourself some help, because there is help. I mean, there's no reason that we should be continuing to sweep this under the rug, or turn what do they say, turn a shoulder to it, or whatever it is. There's no reason to do that. And there are people like Kat who are out there creating a new system that can ideally, and we've talked about this as part of like a business model, looking at what you're planning to do, learning what needs to be part of it, what cannot be part of it, growing stages. The key is to figure the big vision, and then start with where you are, and then how do you get that first step, the drop-in center, and then how many beds are needed. We often talk about the rescue again. The police officers will get somebody, and there are more and more, thank God, more and more, like my favorite detective, who are out there training folks that it's not, you don't arrest a victim. What other crime on this freaking planet do we arrest the victim? I mean, come on now,
Really,
right? I mean, that's a whole other topic, and I'm sure you've seen it over and over and potentially experience things that make you then again not trust other people, right?
right.
Hmm.
Especially the people who are, doing the rescuing, sometimes often feel that they are owed this sense of trust and rapport immediately with
Yes.
the survivors that are coming out, but we turn tricks that look just like you. And so how do
Mhm.
we know we're going to trust you?
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. I tell people all the time that what I went through was hard and trafficking was hard, but there's something that you don't know about yourself until you are in a position where you're choosing life or death, where you get into this survival place, and it's magnificent what your brain can do and how it can package what you're
Yeah.
going through up in a little bow and put it on a shelf, and you can get through it. And trafficking was hard, but at least I was packaged up. When healing was hard, it's harder, and I tell
Oh,
people that
yeah.
because you have to unpackage that, and sometimes it feels like unpackaging that could unravel you, and you sometimes have to unravel yourself to build yourself back up well and better, and that takes a lot of work, and it's a choice every day to stay out of the life. It's a choice every day not to go back, and some people don't understand why, but it's
Mhm.
hard because you're every day you're facing what you went through. When you're moving through, you're moving through, you don't have to think about it, and so
Yeah.
it's a lot, yeah, but
Yeah.
sure.
And that's why people need that support network. And as you mentioned, everyone needs something a little different. And that's why it's important for us in the community to have these places available and spaces available for folks, and to understand that sometimes something can trigger years later.
Yeah.
And you can be just, trudge along doing your thing. And you've shared with me some of the stories of women you've known. And, it looks from the outside, and we're all masters at wearing the mask of, hey, okay, I'm good. And but those masks are just that, they're a facade. and so much can be going on behind the scenes, and that's tough, and it's hard when you're supposed to be healed. I mean, like, amen, you're healed, right? You were saved, you were all these things, you're supposed to be okay. But what we're just kind of sharing here is it's okay not to be okay. And when you're not okay, we need someone to plug into. And it's very helpful when it's someone who's been through what you've been through, and whether that's any recovery, whether it's a substance abuse recovery, exploitative recovery, it doesn't matter what it is. The human brain in recovery is the human brain in recovery.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And oftentimes people have substances that they're trying to, get clean of. And those substances are usually for self-medicating, because it's just a way to shut it off, and
Or,
many.
yeah. Or they're lots of people that I serve never had a substance issue, and then their trafficker,
Yes.
makes them do drugs, and now they have a $300 heroin addiction. If they leave their trafficker, what are they going to do? They're going to get sick, and so it's awful. It's awful. But yeah, there's so many. I think human trafficking is a very interesting crime because it covers and it overlaps with so many other things: addiction and domestic violence and sexual abuse, and all of those types of things. And so it's so complex, right?
It
Like
really
the
is.
process can be so complex as well. But you're right. Being able to see somebody and being like they could do it, and that's what I hope is. I hope that like my life is just showing people like I did it, and oh my gosh, if I can do it, I'm a hot mess. Anyone can do it. Like
Sure.
anyone can do this,
Yes.
and that's just what I hope that
Yeah.
is the story, I guess, that my life tells. That anyone can do it.
Yeah. And I think it's great that you share your story to do just that, to illuminate an issue and show people how this can happen. And it's not a one size fits all. It's not, if you are in this kind of a vulnerability, you're definitely going to be trafficked. There's none of that.
Right. Right.
There's the situations that happen, right? And you mentioned, you were groomed basically
Mhm.
to just think this was just what you do. And then you're in this situation, and someone you trust. And we often, in the media now, people are thinking it's a stranger. Someone's going to come and grab your kids and take them and exploit them and traffic them. Oftentimes it's someone in our own families. Often it's someone, a trusted adult. It's people that we as parents trust.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible, horrible trust to be just ripped away from you. But it is the reality. And then when it is the reality, that's where the heal. And if we can face that and understand, okay, this is what happened to me. It's not what you did. It's people think, what's wrong with you? No, that's not it. Something's happened to somebody,
Mhm.
and that's what needs to be heard. And it's a tough conversation, obviously, and I'm sure many people just hearing your story today think, wow, how do you recover from that? And like you said, you just do it, and you recommit every day, right? Every day.
Yeah. You will be surprised what you will do to survive if you're put in a position, and you have I think every person has that resiliency in them,
Me too.
that comes out, when necessary. But yeah, I think that what you said, it is a tough conversation, but I think a lot of this could be alleviated by having more tough conversations. And
I do too.
conversations are easier than trafficking, and so I think that if somebody had a conversation with me, a safe touch conversation, your body to your body, and you have a choice and you can say no, and I will
Mhm.
believe you always. And, letting me know that like it's people that you can trust, and people that are close to you sometimes can hurt you in ways, and that it's okay to talk about it,
Yeah.
would have done me a lot of good. And I see a lot of intimate partner, and it's
Yeah.
also on the flip side, and personally it was a family issue on both sides. Like, we had lots of sexual abuse in my family, but lots of perpetrating as well. And so what you said earlier, if that's something that you are experiencing, then you also need something. You're not, you know what I mean? You need help, you
Yes.
need support, you need people behind you. And that's also close to my heart is that's an issue too, and there's something wrong, and
Mhm.
there is support about that. And if we could even have conversations about that side of things, sex is only being sold because there's a demand for sex. And
Right.
that demand side of things, this is a basic, economics 101. And so that demand side, and if people just
Mhm.
talked about healing that part of
Yeah.
things, and being okay with saying some of those scary things out loud, it takes the power away, and maybe there'd be less perpetrating happening. So yeah, tough conversations are important.
Yeah, that's right on. And it is a power thing. It is definitely. It's a power struggle within the individual. It's a power struggle between the potential, the buyer and the person who is it. And we often, I don't know how to say this, but we talk about, it's sex with the child, but really it's child rape. People, you've got to understand, that these people are raping these children. This isn't the child. This is not. It's a power struggle. And if you're someone who is buying sex with a person who does not want to be having sex with you, you're raping that person.
Absolutely.
That's just the bottom line. So
Absolutely.
I think part of it is giving the right terminology to the conversation. And I'm glad when it makes, like, I am happy in a way, like not happy like haha, happy and satisfied when it does make people uncomfortable, because we should be uncomfortable about this. There's when we get comfortable with this, there's something wrong with us as a society.
Yeah.
If this is normal and this is okay and acceptable, and by not speaking out against it, we are in a way saying it's acceptable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so this, you all listening and watching right now have a really, this is a call to action for you, not just as a financial institution, but as a human being, understanding that these things are going on. And when you see someone who's potentially vulnerable, have some compassion for them and understand that, that's a person who's been through whatever they've been through to be where they are right now. And if they're surviving, that is a freaking crazy, strong, amazing human being in front of you. Own that, and that's on the other side too, for the people, like, own it. You are amazing. And
Yeah.
it's awesome. But so if you could kind of wrap this up and say to people, all right, so now, folks, you've been exposed to a person who's shared her story and has shared where she's at now. What would you kind of like to leave people with?
I would say that this is a massive issue that one organization can't solve on its
Hmm.
own. And so there's so
Hmm.
many facets to fighting this issue. And
Right.
it's about, intervention and supporting people who have the opportunity to intervene on people being exploited, and prevention for those who are potentially vulnerable to being trafficked. And it's, awareness, spreading the word and letting people know, and talking about the demand for
Yeah.
sex and its long-term care and support for survivors. There's so many ways for you to get involved, and so you have a skill set and you have a passion that will fit into being able to fight this issue. And so I encourage you to figure out what it is and how you can get along, or how you can get involved, whether it's spending time or money or your resources, or
Hmm.
um, mentoring young, the boys and girls clubs, and teaching them
Sure.
that this hypersexuality is a cultural norm, or,
Yes.
those type of things. So get involved some way or somehow, and get to know what's happening in your local communities, and
Yep.
support the mission.
I love it. Perfect. That's a great way to wrap it up. And as I mentioned earlier, folks, there'll be some information how to connect with Kat and her organization in the notes for this talk. And if you all are inspired and want to help in the financial space, reach out to us at ATII. We have an incredible network of people we work with on all different facets. If you're really good with computers and programming and OSINT, the open source information, we have people that you can help there. We're always looking for folks to reach out to other organizations. We have projects galore. So if you're inspired to help, just get plugged in, and we'll find the right place for you. So thank you, Kat. I love always getting to talk with you. we will reconvene after summit and just talk about some of these things that we've brought up, and dive in a little deeper to your business. If anyone's inspired to potentially help with some advising for Kat and her organization, and keeping in mind that this is something that she's really looking at creating a working model where she's at, but then being able to duplicate that and put these into other communities. That's a big vision, and it's a huge mission to take on. But I have full faith that you are going to bring it to life. Full faith.
Thank
You
you.
did
Thank you
great.
for having me and for the work that you guys do.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you, Kat. All right. Bye, everybody.